I want to be Dennis when I get older.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be him. Like, I want that kind of legacy. I want that kind of influence.
Welcome to the Step Up Podcast, where our goal is to help you step up as a man in every area of your life. I'm your host, Dave Kinney, and I'm joined by my pastor, Pastor Chris Kouba. And wasn't Natalie's TED Talk yesterday also?
So good. So good on so many levels.
All the Saban stuff, and she's like a legit fan.
And he's
hardcore fan.
Think about her lifetime. Like, she's not that old. And Saban's been there for 17 years. I'm guessing she's 17, maybe 18. He's been there. He's like, all she's ever known
is Nick Saban. Yeah.
Is Alabama football with Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Like, he said 0 losing seasons. Zero losing seasons.
Okay, so what we're talking about is yesterday, one of the things that we do on staff here at United City is one Tuesday every month, we do what's called TED Talk Tuesday, where a staff member gets up and delivers a 15, 20-minute TED Talk on anything in their life that they're passionate about or interested in or something like that.
That's not spiritual.
That's not spiritual.
Because otherwise you'd be like, oh, yeah.
Right.
No.
Just theology and no, this is like we
want to get to know
straight
you.
up for fun,
Yes,
your personality sort of thing.
Yes.
Yesterday, one of our residents, Natalie, who's awesome, she got up and she did her TED Talk on Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Nick Saban just retired. And so she kind of did this tribute honor to Nick Saban and Alabama football. And it was incredible. She did such a good job. Yeah. I was blown away by it.
Her quote was, Nick Saban's retirement day was the worst day of her life and the best day for any non-Alabama fan out there, which is probably true.
Yeah.
Probably true.
Kind of true. She did so good. It feels like a lot of people are retiring. I know your mom just celebrated her retirement.
She did. Went to a retirement party and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of wild.
And in our city, Ed Young Sr., the legendary pastor at Second Baptist, he just
incredible.
Retired.
We've got a campus of his close by us, and we've got great friends there. That we know a lot of people who've been on staff and been with Ed Young, and all of them have spoken so highly of him separately. So yeah, that's just a big deal. I mean, just for our city, just having somebody like that. Of course, his son now's taking over and that great church.
Did y'all have a retirement party for your mom?
We did. Well, we had two. We had the work one with, like at the office and whatever else. And so we went there for that. And then they did another one the next night at her, at their house with just kind of key, family and close friends and stuff. And it was interesting, you just get this opportunity to, like, I do a lot of funerals, right? And so at a funeral, you typically say a lot of nice things about people that aren't there.
Right.
So it's a little bit like you're trying to comfort those who are there. Very few times, though, do you get an opportunity to actually hear really nice things said about you while you're alive and able to hear it, And so I'm hoping my mom felt that way. I got to say some things nice about her that I meant, and I'd like to think that I would do a better job of saying that on a consistent basis, but I don't. And so,
it's a good opportunity too, just because you're celebrating someone and honoring them and their career, their accomplishments, and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. Retirement parties, they can be super fun. So I'm
still processing this one that I just got through going to of a guy in our church. There's this family that his name is Dennis. He's the dad, and he was retiring from his company. Had been the same exact company for 46 years, which that alone
that's amazing.
That's a long time, right?
That's amazing.
He moved to multiple cities and different things. Been through, I think they said, like 5 different reorgs as a result of this whole experience, kind of a thing. And just so he just was celebrating the fact. But it wasn't what I guess I was expecting. I was expecting it to be a little bit more of like the work thing, and they were going to talk about work. What it ended up being, though, which I think is what kind of shook me, it's gotten me just thinking through, what do I want people to say about me one day? Like, what do I want? I think that's maybe the question I would even pose as I reflect on this a little bit, is like, what is going to be your legacy? Like, what are people going to look up and say about you that you did with your life, that you had the impact that you had with your life? And what I experienced with Dennis was one of the most honoring things I've ever seen towards a dad, a granddad, a friend, all of that. But I think also just sort of like I want to be Dennis when I get older.
Yeah.
Like I want to be him. Like, I want that kind of legacy. I want that kind of influence. Let me just give you a little background on Dennis. So when I first got here 5 years ago now, Dennis and Susie, I had one of the first couples that I had lunch with. And they were just super encouraging from the get-go. Like, just immediately, hey, we're supportive, we're here for you. And
they're the best.
Like, just kind of just really nice people. I would not say that they were just super flashy loud. They instead were just faithful, steady people. I then got to know, they told me they had 6 kids. Okay, great. And so kind of move on. Well, then he started to meet these other people along the way that were also in our church. At the time, 4 of those kids went to our church. Okay. Yep. And he's got 4 daughters and he's got two sons. Well, Hillary started getting people that reached out to her and welcoming her and that kind of stuff. And there was this small group of girls that were about the same age as her who also kind of just reached out and were just warm and friendly. They were just kind and gracious and just, we talked about this on previous episodes, when we first got here and make some changes, everyone doesn't love it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a contentious thing at times. And they just became really good friends to her and just sort of loved her really, really well. And then as we got to talking to them, we realized, oh, that's Dennis's daughter. Oh, that's Dennis's son. Dennis's son, his wife was a part of this group. And it just became a really safe place for my wife. So I kind of got to know, like, okay, I know Dennis. I had that meeting with him initially, and now I've kind of met a bunch of his kids, and man, that really stuck out. And you know this to be true. You can learn a lot about who somebody really is by their kids.
By their kids, yeah.
And by what their kids say about them.
Yeah.
And you just saw this family that all seemed to be tight-knit, and they also just seemed to be super kind, generous, caring, and reached out.
And been in the church for a long time, been really faithful.
And loved the church.
Kind of knew everyone. Everyone knew them, but they were just that family of faithfulness.
Yeah. So I really got to know Dennis more through his kids. Fast forward a little bit. I got to know Dennis in a different way, unfortunately, because his daughter got diagnosed with pretty serious breast cancer. And she just had her 4th child. It was a really, really just traumatic situation. She was a young mom, having just had her 4th child. A couple months later, got the diagnosis. And so we were kind of having sort of an immediate all hands on deck prayer moment, service, whatever you want to call it, at Dennis and Susie's house. And it's the first time I'd ever gone over to their house. And I remember walking in, okay, they have 6 kids. All of them are married, and all of them have multiple grandkids. In fact, I think there's 21. I don't think there was at the time. It was like 20 at the time. 21 now total grandkids. Okay.
In one house.
Well, so we go over there because it's this prayer moment. So like everybody's there.
Yeah.
It was so chaotic.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. And I say that in the most awesome way I've ever seen.
I know exactly what you mean.
Like, it was just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, again, we're coming, the setting and the scene and the reason we were there was heavy and difficult and all of that. But it was also just like, this is so awesome. Like, and the kids are just running all over the place and there's throwing stuff down from the balcony and do whatever else. And Dennis and Susie, Dennis in particular, wasn't rattled, wasn't, he just was like, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Like, he just kind of had this feeling of like, yeah, this is why we have this house. This is why we do what we do. And it was beautiful chaos is the only way I know how to describe it. Then you kind of had the opportunity, we of course had this prayer time and just seeing a dad and walking through the whole journey of just seeing him with his daughter. And it was hard. Yeah. It was super tough. We prayed and we saw God perform many miracles and answers along the way for this cancer, and ultimately he chose to answer in a way that brought ultimate healing, but not the one that we would choose. And so kind of got to know Dennis as a grieving dad, and got to know Dennis as a guy who was kind of having to lead this strong, close family through loss. Yeah. And it's just not something. And so I got to know, I just have respected him is the best way I know how to say it. I've just sort of looked up to him, but a lot of it has been from up close, but kind of from afar. Didn't know all the details, but knew a lot of different people around him. So that's the kind of my background of him. Fast forward, we get to this retirement party. Hillary and I were just kind of pumped to be invited. We thought it was kind of cool. They're like, oh, sweet, this is really cool. We're really grateful that we got to be included in this. And you kind of walk in and realize that it's a lot of close family and a lot of close friends. So we were really honored just to be included.
For sure.
Just because one, we love them. We love all their kids. Like we knew a lot of people. It's
just a fun thing to be a part of.
It's great. And it was like a program. Okay. So kind of eat, talk, and all that kind of stuff. And then they get up and they start doing like awards. And they basically had these awards that all the grandkids and the kids gave their dad or gave their granddad. Okay. And it was just made up stuff. Right. But it was unbelievably awesome. Like I just can't get over how great it was. I mean, it was silly stuff and funny stuff. Like, so all the little bitty grandkids, you know, their stuff was just really just kind of goofy. And like, you know, he was just, I guess he must be known whenever like the kids come over, they know they're just going to get loaded up on snacks and just loaded up on sugar. And I just think that's kind of awesome. I just think that's awesome.
Retirement party opportunity to straight up just honor him as not necessarily the guy who worked at the same company for 46 years, just for dad and grandpa.
I didn't know what company he worked at until the end of the night. It wasn't about that. I think that's maybe the point.
That's the coolest.
I think that's maybe the point. Is this guy worked for, but let me keep going because there was some really cool stuff. So like, you had the little kids saying some stuff like that. Well, then you had a couple of things like some of the kids, like one of the daughters, she said she remembered going to take your dad to work day or take your kids to work day kind of a thing, right? You know, like that's something that you might do. And so the joke is that, you know, he had a lot of kids. His wife, Susie, was like, yeah, you take them all, you know, like just, you know, kind of. So he would go and take his kids to work. And they said they remember doing that, you know, multiple times. And here's what she's talked about. She said, I remember going with my dad. We would get up really early and then he would go to the park and ride spot. And then he would ride the bus downtown. I guess that's where his office must have been. It's downtown. And she said, I remember the very first time that we did that, we go and we sit down on the bus. There's all these different people on the bus. The first thing my dad does is he reaches down into his briefcase and he pulls out his Bible and he sets it on his lap and he reads it the whole way down. She said, the next time we went to take your kids to work day, she said, I remember seeing my dad sits down, first thing he does. And she said, it wasn't because I was there. It's just what he does. It was very obvious. And she said he pulls out his Bible and she opens it up. And here's what she says. I realized then my dad's different. My dad gets ready for the day different than everybody else does. She said she said she looked around and some of these people were there were like, you know, kind of reading other stuff or listening to music or putting on whatever, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, this is what my dad does. And she just said the thought of knowing dad does this every day always sort of gave her confidence. And she said it explains why he was just always so wise.
Yeah.
Like he just always gave good advice. He always listened well. And I just listened to that thinking, oh my goodness, what a picture, what an unbelievable blessing. And I promise the reason why he had so much favor in his company for 46 years would be because he led every day knowing who he worked for.
Yeah.
It was part of it. It was never a question. And I have no doubt he probably got frustrated and disappointed and all that kind of stuff. But that was something that stuck out with one of the kids. Let me give you something else. One of the other kids, they talked about his discipline. They talked about how he was a man who had a routine. Every single day, he would get up really early. He would leave the house before they were up or really kind of a thing. And that he was just kind of like a clockwork, always kind of guy. And they said, and we always saw you home at 5:30. They said, Dad, I don't remember any time that you've missed anything. I don't remember any time that you weren't coaching stuff. What's crazy is he does this now with some of his grandkids. I've talked to him about this. And so just the fact that a man was able to have so much favor and do so well, he got up early, he worked hard all day long, and he got his butt home, and he was present.
Yeah.
And what his kids don't remember, in fact, they kind of were joking when they were talking, I don't think they know what he does to this day. Yeah. I don't think they have any clue. Something with pipes, something. I don't really know. I don't even know what he does. But they just talked about the fact that he was always around. I do know they know this. At one point, I think he became an expert witness about these things. And one of the kids talked about how they just thought it was the coolest thing ever that their dad was an expert, kind of a thing. But it just shows your kids don't care.
Yeah.
Your kids
exactly
don't
right.
care what you do, but they care knowing that you provided for them, and then you got your butt home, and you provided for them present by being there. You were around. You were at the practices. You were all those things, and you just could see a grown child with kids telling their dad, thanks.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for being there. Like, let me give you another one. Just because there's a lot of kids, so they have a lot of things that they were trying to say, which is good. One guy, actually, the youngest son, actually worked with his dad at the company for 5 years. So he talked about how that was kind of a unique thing. He actually does know what his dad does, and kind of got to know a few things, and he joked about that. It was really funny. But he said every once in a while his dad would say, hey, let's go to lunch. Oh, sweet. Let's go. So I guess they must have worked on different floors. So somehow they would have to meet up and they would have to get on the elevator. And he began to describe his dad, and that every single time the elevator would open, 1 floor, 2 floors, whatever, and multiple floors, but it would open multiple times, his dad would greet the person that came on by name and then say, how's something? And he said it was just like he was a celebrity. Like and he just talked about how he would then get on the elevator after this and would not be with his dad and feel the need to talk to people and be friendly and whatever else. And his point, I think, was just how well liked his dad was in the company.
That's so cool.
And that's a unique thing to be able to get a chance to see that and get to observe that. And I just thought that was I just thought it was really interesting to be able to hear that being said, and he's a man of good reputation.
Well, that's what I was going to say is imagine how cool that would be as the kid to see your dad being that intentional with those relationships and that caring and kind of having the proof that as intentional as you are at being present at home, you're just as intentional about being present with the people that you work with.
Yes. I think that's kind of that was basically his point, because he was sort of like, Dad, you treated them the same way you did everybody. Yeah. Like and just to think about 46 years is a long time.
Yeah.
You're going to build a reputation there. And a lot of times, particularly men, our reputations are generally around how successful we are, how much money we make, how much we have achieved, and all those. I don't want to minimize. Those things are important. If you're going to get a job, you're going to work hard at it. You need to do well and work heartily for the Lord. But man, what kind of, and I wasn't, of course, there at the business party that they had, but I've got to imagine they were just like, man, you knew my name.
Yeah.
You was a big company. You knew who we were. You had this relationships, and he just had favor. You could just tell his son was proud because he's like, that's my dad.
Yeah.
I guess my dad, that's what he did. They did some more of the, kind of grandkid type stuff. And they all had personal, especially the older kids, personal things that they were able to go and say specifically about their granddad that they appreciated, and just, 21 now grandkids, and just the chaos, but the beautiful chaos of all of that. It was just a moment. I don't know how else to say it. And I really did feel, man, I pray and hope that I can leave a legacy and leave an impact where I love it if I was old enough and sane enough and I was able to be at a good place to hear it. I don't want to have to be at my funeral and I don't get to hear it, but just to be able to have people speak and say, man, you impacted me.
Yeah.
Like and that's what I got to watch and see. So the next morning, okay, I'm in my time with the Lord, and I happen to be in Psalm 112. And I read it, and I was like, this is Dennis.
Yeah.
And it just became yet another kind of celebration. I want to read this passage to you, and let this be a challenge to you men in terms of the legacy that you lead, okay? Praise the Lord. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. Makes me, first of all, think about pulling his Bible out every single day. Mm-hmm. He knew what he needed to do. He focused on that. He listened to God's word. He listened to that voice. He teaches here, a life group here at our church. So it's not just something that he's like,
Yep.
He's given it to others. And this was a situation. I don't know what he felt. I can only imagine what he felt. He had to just feel blessed. Mm-hmm. And it's just sort of one of those things like, man, the Bible's real. Like, it's true. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commands. Here's a guy who did it. He did it. He did it. And he was extremely blessed. Here's what it says, verse 2. His offspring will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. You have a situation now where you got a guy who's got 6 kids who are all married. You got grandkids everywhere. All of them love the church. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that can't be the case if somebody in your family doesn't love the church. That's not what I'm trying to say. My point is this. I think Dennis is a picture, though, of one, having a lot of offspring. My gosh, there's kids everywhere. There were so many
to keep his
children.
Sanity and be honored like that with that many kids and grandkids is awesome.
It was wild. But man, they just had a stalwart that they could look up to, and it's like, this is what it looks like to work hard for your whole life. Mm-hmm. This is what it looks like to be able to now be in a season where, man, he and Susie, I think even while we're recording this, they're on a cruise to Alaska, living it up, and they should.
Yeah.
Like, they just should. Like, it's just beautiful, like the thought of that, because he's getting rewarded for just a generation, and those grandkids, they don't even know how good they've got it. Like, there's such a gift, such a blessing. Here's what it says, verse 3. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever. Now, I would not necessarily call Dennis a flashy, like, wealthy, super rich guy. Now, here's the reality, though. He had 6 kids.
Right.
He had to be pretty loaded just to pay for insurance, okay? Like,
that's what you're learning right now, though.
Like,
you're speaking at that from a dad.
he may not have been able to express all of that through lavish blah, 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 but he provided every for one of his kids, and they were never without. He was loaded. Yeah. And I don't say that like any other way than just like, man, God used him to provide a lot for his family. His wife got up there, and one of the awards she had was the provider. And she talked about how we were never without.
Yeah.
Like, you made a way for us. And I have no doubt they had hard times or whatever, but I just think it just shows, man, if you just work hard.
Yeah.
He's give your
diligent.
life. Yes. Yeah. You're going to be rewarded. And he was. Multiple reorgs, they talked about how the companies went through. And times he wasn't sure. And every single time he kept there. I just think God rewards hard work.
Yeah.
And Dennis is of evidence of wealth and riches are in his house. He's a beautiful home. He's got a beautiful family. He's got he's got all the things he needs. He's not without want. And I think here's what he chose to spend it on. He chose to spend it upon a house that the kids could destroy when they're all over at the house. And he would gladly
He wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah.
He'll buy new carpet. He doesn't care because he wants that. And I think that's where being around the family as much as I have, I look at that and think, man, I want blessed chaos.
Yeah.
I would gladly pay for paint on the walls because my kids keep slapping the stupid thing, the overhead thing every time they walk by, or grabbing the sides and causing stains. But man, it's just worth it. It's just worth it. And I don't know, I look at that and think, wealth and riches are in his house. His righteousness endures forever. Here's what the scripture says. Light dawns in the darkness for the upright. He is gracious, merciful, and righteous. It is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. This reminds me here. Basically, it's saying this is somebody who fights for the right things, fights for relationships. This is somebody who fights to be generous. Dennis was that.
Right.
His son noticed it in 5 years. Dad knows everybody.
Yeah.
Like, he knows everybody. He's kind to everybody. He's nice to everybody. I just know, I know whenever I've been through some stuff here and I've called and reached out to Dennis, he's just been a listening ear and an encouraging ear. And I know his kids have been that for me.
No doubt.
His kids have been that for you.
Yeah.
His kids have been that for Hillary. Man, they learned that from somewhere.
I was on the phone with one of his kids yesterday, not 24 hours ago. And I was talking to him about some stuff, getting some advice from him. And hearing all of this now, which I did not know any of this, hearing all of this now, it makes me really thankful for the guy I was talking to, Dad, because he exemplified this stuff so well.
Totally.
I love the fact that his kids that I know personally, they're hardworking.
Yeah.
They're intentional.
Very much so.
They know people's names.
Yep.
I mean, look at where they learned it.
Totally.
That is legacy.
It's who Dad was. It's what he was all about. This is the next verse. He is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. First of all, I think that's just a baller verse. That's just an unbelievable verse. If you think about it, he is not afraid of bad news. I mean, like most men in leadership, your job is bad news.
Right.
Like your job is to put out fires of bad news. He's not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. Man, I watched him walk through his daughter's cancer and this very close, tight-knit family, and just his consistency. And man, I saw him grieve too. I saw him hurt. I still see him doing that, and all of us do, frankly, as we think about that. But I also just saw an oak, like a big, massive oak tree that was just firm.
Yeah.
And his stability. I remember being at times in the hospital, and Daniel's, her husband, was the same way, but just the stability of faith, not of, I mean, gut-wrenching diagnosis and moments and highs and lows and whatever, but you just saw a man who knew when to pray, who knew when to rally, who knew when to get the kids out, who knew when to get the family together. It just saw a rock, just an oak. And I just think that verse reminds me of Dennis. He's not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. Doesn't mean it's easy. And I think I would just encourage all of us as we think through our legacy. You're going to walk through dark, difficult days. But man, just do so with your head up, your chest out, and your faith firm.
Yeah.
And I watch that to this day when I watch Dennis. And when I see him on a Sunday morning, man, I've told him this even in the midst of the whole battle with his daughter, because I knew he was in and out and hospitals and whatever else. And man, seeing him on the second row, I had a couple of times, I had to kind of gather myself before I even preached, just because it meant so much that he was there. Mm-hmm. And he said this, where else would I be? Which is just
amazing.
It just says so much. Here's what it says. His heart is steady. He will not be afraid until he looks in triumph on his adversaries. He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. He's been a generous man of his information, a generous man of his prayers, a generous man of his resources. His righteousness endures forever. His horn is exalted in honor. The wicked man sees it and is angry. He gnashes his teeth and melts away. The desires of the wicked will perish. I'm telling you, we have a culture who is going to celebrate men no longer even calling themselves men, or men being chauvinistic men, or men being high-achieving men. And I instead think what we actually need, which is going to be maligned and is going to be seen as old school and whatever else by the culture, we need a lot more men like Dennis.
Yeah.
And
right.
As you think about your lifestyle, as you think about your opportunity to have people around you that could potentially say some things about how you've lived, what are they going to say? I got a glimpse of what that can look like that, man, I'm telling you, I long for. I long for that. I want to be intentional about it. I want to make steps towards it. If there's anything that I've even mentioned to you today about what Dennis did, man, steal it. I promise you, he will gladly give it away.
Yeah.
He will gladly tell you, man, do this. And he'll probably tell you, man, I didn't do so well in this, because that's his humility. But I'm also telling you, it was an unbelievable thing to be able to see children rise up and call their father blessed.
It really is legacy. I mean, you think about this podcast, Dennis is a man who stepped up.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
At every turn in his life, for a long time, in the same direction, he stepped up.
And still is.
And what a special thing.
Yep. So great.
A special thing.
Good.
So thanks so much to all of you that are listening to us. Please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast and help us get the word out on everything that is Step Up Podcast. PC, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Step Up Podcast. Do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share this episode to help us get the word out. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment and even leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For additional information or to reach out directly, please visit chriskouba.com. That's chriskouba.com. You can follow Pastor Chris on social media and just search Chris Kouba, Kouba. You can also follow United City Church on all socials at United City Church. That's UNTD City Church. Thanks so much.